Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us across the fence. I'm Fran Stoddard. This year marks the 100th anniversary of the Champlain Valley Exposition. And there's a new book just out this summer with a century of expo and fair photographs. Champlain Valley Fair, Images of America, is by photographer and writer Steve Mease of Williston. Mease tells the story of 100 years of fun using more than 200 historic and contemporary photos, chronicling how a modest country fair in Essex grew to become Vermont's largest annual event. Steve joins us this afternoon via Zoom. Congratulations on the new book, and thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks, Fran. It's great to be here.
So give us a little bit of background on how your book and this fantastic collection of fair images came together.
Well, it actually grew out last year, a year ago, during COVID. The fair came to me and asked to update their history exhibit. I've been feeling a little tired after it was created back for the 75th anniversary. So I spent this summer going over through boxes of photos and creating a new history exhibit. It was great. I had worked at the fair from 2004 to 2008, and so I kind of knew where a lot of the pictures were in the scrapbooks, and it really, gave me a good start. So once the exhibit was done, I went to talk to Tim Shea and Jeff Bartley, and I said, "Hey, we should do a book, in these series of Image of America, which are very popular communities all over. There's lots of Vermont versions of it.
Sure.
Let's put this in a little more of a permanent record and a publication that can be shared over the years and much beyond the fair."
Well, what a great idea. And it sounds like you had a lot of material to work with. How did you winnow it down to just the images that we find in the book?
Well, it was, there was a closet at the administration building at the fair that had just boxes and boxes of black and white prints, contact sheets, slides, and I got to really call out the folks who back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s kept meticulous scrapbooks of newspaper clippings about the fair and stories that were written. It was a rich collection of information. And also, for the 75th anniversary, the fair did a history booklet that brought together a lot of the stories and photos and things like that. So that was also sort of a source material for my book.
So was there anything that surprised you about what you found in all those papers and news clippings?
What I found was that, it was fascinating to look at the old newspapers and the stories and how they sort of talked about the fair back in the early days. Back in, started in 1922, and the first actual fair at the Essex Fairgrounds was 1923. They didn't even have the grandstand done, but they had done the harness racing track. So it was just, the stories that came up over the years were really sort of amazing, and some of the things hadn't changed. The agricultural exhibits, the folks bringing their prize vegetables and pies and cakes, and looking for blue ribbons. That hadn't really changed. And but what was interesting was people used to really dress up for the fair. They were suits and ties, hats. This was a big event. There wasn't the internet, there wasn't TV, so a lot of folks, this was a big summer event to come into town.
Yeah, no matter what you're showing, whether it's plants or horses, cattle, anyway, wonderful. Entertainment has always been a big part of the fair. How did you tell that story in the book?
Well, entertainment, it really evolved over the years. Back in the early days, it was, sort of acrobats and carnival shows. Then more towards the 1930s, 40s, they started to bring in sort of Broadway vaudeville acts that they would do on the stage in front of the grandstand. And over the years, started to bring in bigger shows. I think in the early '60s, you get folks like Brenda Lee, Lawrence Welk stars, some early country, um, Broadway reviews of dancers coming in. It was pretty amazing. And there were the big shows. The grandstand was, over the years, people have really been able to see some of the um, big stars very often on their way up. People like Britney Spears, Taylor Swift, um, Justin Bieber, Bruno Mars, folks like that have all played at the fair, and even at the exposition, people have been able to see Elton John, Neil Young, Bob Dylan, Fish. It's really been the place to see some of the biggest concerts that have occurred in Vermont.
Absolutely, and I missed some of those.
Yes. Well, if you stop by the history exhibit, we compiled a list of the top 50 entertainers, concerts that have happened since back in the '70s. It's quite an impressive list. It's worth a look at.
Yeah, absolutely. And also over the years, what for you were some of the most endearing or iconic attractions at the fair, then and now and continuing?
Well, for me, I mean, I loved the sort of approach the fair in two ways. I mean, there are folks who always just stay on sort of the agriculture side of it. Then there are the folks who go on the midway,
Hmm.
and then there are folks who love them both. And I kind of fall into that latter category. But I love watching the kids show their cows. Walking through the poultry barn. Just seeing the kids out there in the morning washing their cows over by the duck pond to get ready for showing. I mean, it's a long tradition, and I really think it's been a way to highlight, in Vermont's agricultural history. So
Absolutely, and we just happened to mention Steve Boehner. This might be his last year.
it looks like it's going to be. I think he was planning to make last year his last year, but when he realized that this was going to be the 100th anniversary celebration, he decided to come back for one more 10 days. He's I can't remember a fair when he hasn't been there, bringing people up onto the stage and doing his hypnotism show. And I've watched it many times. Fortunately, I've never fallen under his hypnotic gaze, despite standing there. But I continue to be amazed every year, every show. People are willing to go up there, knowing what's going to happen, and put on a show for the rest of us.
Right.
And I think we're going to miss Steve after this year. So this is definitely the year to get out and see him. And if you want to get up on the stage and get hypnotized, this
Great,
is the year.
unique stuff. Okay, and of course, one can't talk about the fair without talking about food. Those once-a-year indulgences that are very hard to resist. Talk about the food.
Well, you definitely have to take a stroll down Steakhouse Road, which is right there by the grandstand entrance. Very often, if you're waiting to get in a big show, you're lined up right down Steakhouse Road. But you pick up your buttered popcorn at the Rotary Club booth. You want to get make sure you get a corn dog over at the Piggy Bar. They've been there for 75 years putting those things out. Al's French fries, onions and peppers piled on a Mr. Sausage, milkshakes from the Dairy Center. And you can't go to the fair without stopping at the Maple Sugar Shack and picking up at least a creamy or a maple donut.
Absolutely. Are the bloomin' onions coming back, or?
Oh, I'm sure they'll be there. And there's always, you always have to go and look for the new thing. Is it
Right.
fried Oreos or bacon on a stick? And
Right.
I think I understand there's going to be a new margarita bar
Oh,
there. For a couple of years, there's been a martini bar to sort of, if you taste beer away from the beer tent.
okay. We'll be looking for those. So, for you, what are some of the turning points in the fair's history?
Well, I think that the move from Essex Center to finding its current location in Essex Junction was probably its first big momentous location and turning point. But building on that over the years and really having sort of a vision for bringing in new buildings, barns, facilities, and things like that. But I think one of the biggest turning points, at least when I look back at it, and kind of at its midpoint, was the grandstand fire in June of 1965. And it was a 43-year-old wooden structure that burned very quickly on that Saturday morning. Fortunately, no one was hurt. But as the story goes, the night before there were 5,000 people in that stand watching a rodeo.
Wow.
So it could have been a much different story had something gone that way.
Sure.
But the result of that was after the replacing the barn, the grandstand, they moved it back, created that sort of grassy area that's in front of the grandstand now, and readjusted where the track was. But it also gave them a facility that allowed them to do those big concerts where you could bring in 10,000 folks for a Elton John concert or a big country show.
Sure.
So that was really changing it.
And then there's the Expo Center that made it year-round.
Right. I think it was the Expo Center. The building of that really made the Expo a year-round facility. Indoor shows. You bring in the flower show, antique shows. Indoor soccer. Nordic Spirit Soccer's home is at the Expo Center. So that was really important.
So one quick highlight, we're almost out of time, Steve. What keeps you coming back?
It's the people. I love seeing friends that I run into every year, superintendents, people who work in the different departments. It's just it's a real family out there at the Expo, and I really enjoy seeing those, catching up, and then of course the walk down the Midway at Saturday night, watching people just having fun, teenagers out there experiencing their first independence.
Yeah, right. We're all looking forward to it. I'm sure those teenagers are too. So quickly, how can folks get your book?
It'll be available at the fair. You can pick up a copy in the home crafts area. It's also in local bookstores. You can get it at Phoenix Bookstore, Barnes & Noble, and you can order it online if you're not local.
Okay.
So it's going to be, it's out there.
Steve, thank you so much. It's been great to talk to you.
Appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
See you at the fair.
All right.
And once again, thank you for joining us across the fence. I'm Fran Stoddard. Stay well.